Hi, I'm Pearl, and I decided to do a series of videos about silencing the inner critic, or the ego, what some people call the ego. Susan Jeffers used to call it the chatterbox, and I think lots of people around the world have different names for it. And it's funny, when I started thinking about this, I hope it's not too windy, I was thinking, I'll do 5 little videos, and then I started writing a list of all the different ways to silence the inner critic, and it got really long. So I think this might be quite a long series of little videos for you. I got a little bee. There's a little wasp. Actually, that brings me back to one of the things I was going to say about the inner critic, and the voice of the ego. And it's what Don Miguel Ruiz calls the voice of knowledge as well. He's got a great book about it. Do check it out. And I've learned probably most of this stuff from him, but I've also learned from all kinds of cultures and just from experimenting on my own as well. So look at all these birds. It's amazing. This is a lovely spot here. We have a little sandbank, which is kind of like a sound bank because it tends to protect from a lot of other sound. And it's really beautiful here. And so I just want to start with, why do we need to silence the inner critic? Why do we need to silence the ego? And really, the thing is that the ego is what I believe is what we have learned to live in this world. So it's all the things that we've learned over the years on how to be safe, how to be successful, even if it's not actually true. So it's a bit like all the things we've learned from the people, society, to stay protected. So it could be how you cross the road. It could be that you have to get an ordinary job, or it could be how you live and the kind of house you live in, or it could be 100 things. But very often the problem with the ego and what we've learned to stay safe is that it usually contradicts what we ourselves need in order to be free and what I call successful, which is to be ourselves. And it keeps changing as well. I think the thing is the ego is very, very clever. It adapts. So even when we let go of some beliefs and we let go of some noises in our head, the ego is very quick to then adapt and say, okay. And the reason is that the ego wants to survive. This what we have created, this fictional character, this artificial intelligence, it wants to survive. It has there's a lot of people write very deep stuff about this. I won't go into it too deeply, but I'm sure you can understand, especially if you're an artist. I think we're all artists in one way or another, that the inner critic is the one that says, you have to do the work that people will buy. You have to do the work that gets the good reviews, regardless of what you yourself believe and feel about your work. And if you look at really great music artists and visual artists, writers, they often, buck the trend. They're always doing something different, something exciting. They may well not be appreciated in their own lifetime. I always used to say being a bit Van Gogh. And he's always come up for me. His work's always come up for me at times when I'm struggling with my inner critic. And the very first thing I would say, so this is like the introductory video, and to tell you, to try and explain what the inner critic is. But the most important, the first way of silencing and getting to know your inner critic is to listen. And Don Miguel Ruiz says, if it's you that's talking, who is listening? So if you're new to this concept, or even if you've been struggling with it for a while, sometimes I find the best thing is just to sit and listen to what the voice in your head is actually saying, and remembering that it is not you. It is the inner critic, it is the ego, it is the chatterbox. And again, Susan Jeffers is a wonderful person to listen to about the chatterbox. But just listen. And as Don Miguel Ruiz says, don't believe it. Listen, but be skeptical. Listen and think, do I really think this? Or is this something my grandmother taught me, something my mother taught me, something I saw on the TV one time? Is this a belief that is my belief? Or is it something I want to let go of and ignore? So just by listening, and you'll find that the ego is very sneaky. As soon as you start listening, it starts being a little bit more careful about what it says to you. So start listening. It's like a friend. You know, if you've got a friend who's, what they call a frenemy. Your ego is your frenemy. It says all these things that are like, oh, well, don't wear that dress because everyone will laugh at you. And it tries to, it's like protecting you, but it's also a bit mean, you know. Or your ego may have a different voice. It may sound very different. But listen very closely to what this frenemy is telling you. Sometimes it's useful. Sometimes it tells you some interesting and useful things, like remember when this happened or remember when that happened. But then you can choose, listen to it, hear it, and then choose if you want to eat it, if you want to absorb that back into yourself, or you want to say, I ain't putting up with this anymore. Like you have a friend that talks to you like that, and one day you turn around after years and you say, stop making comments about my body. Stop saying mean things about my body. And then once you start doing that, you recognize that any negative thoughts, any negativity about your body, that's the ego. That's the ego saying it. And then it becomes much easier to ignore, because you understand, oh, that's my ego. That's not me. That's not what I think. That's not what I think. This is all the stuff that I've learned from everyone else. So that's your first lesson in the ego and then in critic. I'm going to go and write a list now, because I've come up with about 10 different ways already to silence the inner critic. So you're going to get a lot of little videos. This is about 7 minutes, this one. I think that's all right. I'm going to try and make the other ones shorter, because then you already know what the inner critic is. Have a fabulous day. I think it's going to be a good day. Not too shabby, is it? Take care. Bye-bye.